You may be seated. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Today's Torah portion, as Rabbi told us, is Ha'azinu. We are getting towards the end. And it seems like we've been saying that for a long time. We've even said that we're at the beginning now, but here we are again saying we're getting towards the end. The majority of this Torah portion consists of Moses giving his last major speech before the Israelites, before his death. The speech is referred to as a shirah, a poem. But as some of us know, a shirah in Hebrew can also translate to song. Now, if you read the words of this poem, it would be quite the song if it were sung. So I like to think it was a poem. But poems, songs, they're both amazing. They have similar powers. They're powerful mechanisms. Poems and songs, they have the ability to make people feel in ways that we can't feel through ordinary speech alone. So now I want to ask, what's the power of poetry? What is the power of music, of song? How has it impacted us? I want to invite people to tell a short moment in their life when music or poetry has gratefully impacted you. Fran.
For me, music, I've been studying right now that music can really help you with pain, with everything. They're seeing a lot with brain. Music to me will either calm me down when I need to be calmed down or lift me up, and I have different playlists for everything.
Yeah.
So, I know it would be a surprise to people, but Broadway tunes really lift me up, and Broadway tunes can calm me.
Excellent. Thank you, friend. I agree. Music can be amazing, especially for those of us who are in pain. I too have a playlist for everything, and I too have Broadway as a big part of that playlist. Wow. Anybody else? Ruthie.
Y'all have
Yes, it really does. A song can call a moment in our life, a moment from long ago, perhaps, and it can keep us connected, keep us grounded to that moment, and it can stir up a bunch of emotions in us that maybe we want to feel, maybe we don't, but when we hear that song, we feel those emotions again. Anybody else? Oh, Rabbi.
I have two quick thoughts. One is that I remember in grade school and even in high school, we actually had to memorize poems sometimes and recite them in front of the class, whether it was Shakespeare or other poetry. I think it was a very valuable experience to learn how to take in poetry, how to recite it in a way that connects. And the other association that you gave me was in Israel. A lot of the classic songs of Israel were actually, the words were written by poets. And poets and composers collaborated, as well as choreographers who actually put the poems and music into a dance form so that your whole body can sort of celebrate life. And I just think that was sort of an amazing feature of the classic Shirei Eretz Yisrael, the songs and poetry of Israel. They're one thing.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi. Definitely, the land of Israel has a very rich history of poets and of poems, and keeping with Fran's idea of Broadway musicals, Musical Cats comes to mind. That was originally a set of poems, and people decided, wait a minute, let's put it to music.
Nice.
All right. So in this Torah portion, we have Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7. And this verse says, and this is again Moses reciting to the people of Israel, "Remember the days of old. Reflect upon the years of other generations. Ask your parent, and your parent will tell you. Your parent will inform you. You had the opportunity to talk to someone from a younger generation. What would you want to tell them about this world? How would you sum up all that has got us to this day? Would you put a positive spin on it, a negative spin on it? What advice would you give? Alternatively, are we obligated as members of older generations to give advice to the next generations to come? Do we feel that we have the right, that we have earned our bread, we have gotten to this point, and now we can opt out? That we can let the other generations figure it out for themselves? Before we say how we feel personally about this question, what arguments can be made for each position? Esther.
Whether or not touch the fire, it is hot and you will be burnt. And therefore parents have responsibility. I'd say like everything is that simple. I have sat down and had the difference. That's the depth. But do they responsibility of those difficult?
Thank you, Esther. Yeah, I think a lot of us would agree that as a parent, someone has the responsibility to teach their children about the world, stuff about the great, weighty nature of the universe around us, and also smaller things like don't touch the fire. Or, of course, don't touch that electrical socket. That was what my dad always told me. Anybody else, Rabbi?
I think that parent-child relationships have to continually change and evolve. I think that Esther's right that in earlier stages, parents have a responsibility to be more directive and to be sort of managing a child's safety in ways. But I think as we continue to grow older, I think that there's a balance being made that needs to be made between giving advice and letting children grow up and take their, use their wings and fly and flutter. And that might be, they might fall a little bit, right? Like it's almost falling down from a bicycle is almost part of learning how to ride a bike almost, right? Like sometimes you're not going to get everything right, but you have to have that experience, I think, of a misstep in order to take a better, more firmer step. And I don't know how to balance that relationship. And then, of course, as we get into the older stages of life, a lot of the stuff that parents did for children in an early age, children actually have to step up and help their parents out at a later stage when parents' health, mental and physical, starts to decline. When is a good time, and to listen to conversations about when it's a good time to stop driving at night, when it's a good time to not do this. So I think there's a whole balancing over the course of a lifetime of parents and children's relationship changing.
Thank you, Rabbi. Yeah, certainly the relationship between a parent and their child can change over the course of their lifetimes. And of course, it is important at some times to be that overprotective parent, and it is important at times to let your child spread their wings. Yeah, Bill. Can you explain more, please?
Yes, what I would tell I told my children, guided them, or there wasn't the caution, say, worldwide, as I would tell my grandchildren. My children could go out and walk to and from. I wasn't concerned about their safety. However, can a child, a grandchild, child of today have that same
ability. Things are different in this world. We have, it depends on the generation. And as Rabbi said, yes, my kids are becoming the parents. And I know that what I would tell my children now as adults is you have to be more cautious with your children than I was with you.
Thank you, Phil. As someone who doesn't have children of my own, it's always wonderful to hear parents tell me how it's done. Lois.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lois. Certainly, even children can grow old, and it seems like the cycle repeats itself, and it's a beautiful thing that even as parents, if we are fortunate enough to watch our child grow old, that can be beautiful too. So I'm not going to have us answer this question, but I do want to pose for a moment. What if we're not talking about the relationship between a literal parent and a child? Do we then still have an obligation to the next generation to teach them and to give them advice? All right, sounds like we're saying yes. Maybe there's some people in here who are thinking no and just aren't saying that. And, that's something to think about too. But yes seems to be the overwhelming answer here today. So in this Torah portion, Hazinu, Moses gave this grand speech to the Israelites with Joshua by his side. Moses knows that he is about to die. Rashi refers to this event as a sort of changing of the guard ceremony, with one leader departing and one being ushered in. When you have a grand leader like Moses who is leaving you, it's only natural for the people to think, Joshua is great, but he's no Moses. Sometimes the shoes that the new leader has to step into are so big that even if the new leader is a good leader, it's the shoes he has to step into or the shoes that she has to step into make it harder for them to do their job. When an old leader is departing and a new one is coming in, what is the job of the old leader as they depart? Should they simply try to privately give advice to the new leader coming in and hope the new leader will listen? Or should they make one last grand speech to the people, one last Torah that could be so powerful, especially if he knows or she knows that they have the people in their pocket, that it might overshadow the incoming leader? Would it have been better, or would it have been different if God had told Joshua instead of Moses to make this speech? What is the duty of an outgoing leader? What do you guys think? Fran.
I think the duty of an outgoing leader is to look at the whole picture, what's good for the community and not for that person themselves. And to even tell the new leader, if you need my advice or help, I'm here. I will sum up maybe what I want, and if that new leader knows the community well, can give a speech like Moses did, then back away.
So
it's hard to have two leaders in a group.
it is hard to have two leaders, and it's also very, very natural for us to want the last word, especially if it's going to be literally our last words. Right. Esther.
way that the new leader comes dies. Right. In that case, what the old one done, gradually put more and more. They're presumptive. By the time they have to take over, they know how to do the job. On the other hand, democracy like you have to do a lot of work before you're even allowed to say, I want this job. Or the outgoing leadership get out of the way when the people have made decisions.
Mm. So yeah, it's definitely a matter of circumstance, especially when you have a democracy like ours, where the outgoing leader and the incoming leader can have views that greatly clash. So I want to ask one last question. We are running short on time, so I will only take one or two answers. At the end of the Torah portion, Hazinu, God tells Moses to climb Mount Nebo so that he can see the land of Canaan before he dies. God reminds Moses that he's going to die without stepping foot into the land, and that this is his punishment for his disobedience. God reminds Moses that he is being punished, but nevertheless, God still allows Moses to see the land, even though he doesn't step foot into the land. As a parent, as a teacher, a community leader, or even as a human being, have you ever planned to punish someone for something, rightfully so perhaps, only to lighten the punishment ever so slightly? Is there a value in this? Is it because you're being nice? Or is it because they deserve leniency? Or is it some combination of the two? Phil?
Punishment that one of the just lenient and passive about situation, where another one will be more, you're punished. This is it. Other parent will let up on it. And, you know, this is just your problem, no matter what. This is the way she is.
Yeah, having a child can be an interesting time, because oftentimes people have two parents that they live with. I know that's not always the case, but oftentimes there are two, and they might have different opinions on what should be done. And as a kid, you might sometimes learn to play off of one parent, but certainly it's difficult, and there is more than one way to punish somebody. And who's to say who is wrong and who is right? Especially in a case like Moses going to die on the mountain, that's not for us as humans to say. I'll take one more, and then we're going to finish up. Rabbi?
Just been so thoughtful today. I'm thinking a lot about what does it mean to transition successfully, whether it is from one set of government team to another government team. What is it from in synagogue leadership when some people retire or move away, whether it is lay leadership or rabbinic leadership? How do you make the best kind of transition for the community in doing it? What are the systems that should stay in place? What systems are we open to changing? Who makes those decisions? How do you do it gracefully and graciously so that everyone benefits, to keep the best of the old leadership around, but also the new person has different skills and insights and talents, and how do we help those to flourish? So thank you for helping me think a little bit more about that.
Of course. Yeah, everybody has different skills. There is always an overlap, but there are also some things that some person can do well that the previous person could not. And of course, vice versa. Everybody is unique. So we're reading this Torah portion, this Shabbat, having just finished Yom Kippur. The past year has now left us. We have stepped into the future. Moses' term has ended, and Joshua's term has begun. What are we going to do now? Well, soon we're going to sit in some booths. We're going to sit in some booths. Monday night begins the holiday of Sukkot. We are going to go out into the world, whether or not we like the new leader that has been chosen, and we are going to try to celebrate. We're going to do some Jewish camping if we can. It seems hilariously fitting in the age of COVID that God is asking us to gather together outside, engage in festivities together in a sukkah with good airflow. I hope that we are all able to find a sukkah for the coming holiday and that we're able to sit under it. If we don't have that opportunity, though, which is true for some of us, we don't have space on our property for a sukkah, and we don't have anywhere else to go to visit somebody else's sukkah, let's find another way to enjoy the world that God has made for us. Step out into the sun for a moment. Feel the heat of its warm rays on your face. And then, when it gets a little too hot, take shelter. Open your parasol and feel the relief of the shade. Take a moment to enjoy being outside in God's world. God has given us a beautiful world to live in. California, just like Israel, is particularly beautiful. Enjoy it. And let's enjoy the year 57.